Welcome to our audio podcast. This is Dr. Da Vinci, and in today's podcast, we're going to talk about discipline, about how to make money in 2024 and beyond. We're going to discuss the collapse of our civilization, how to prevent it, or possibly how to survive. We're going to talk about building a community. We're going to talk about how to lose 45 pounds in 90 days, because I've done that. We're going to actually discuss the most important topic that nobody really discusses in the business community, and that is, what are we doing on this planet? What are you doing on this planet? Who are you, really? And where are you going after your physical heart will stop pumping blood through your system? We're going to talk about some linguistics, some geopolitics. We're going to discuss Edward Bernays and his role in the fall of the government in Guatemala. Edward Bernays is a relative of Freud, and he's considered the father of the modern PR, public relations. Where does all power come from, you might ask? Well, let's look at the recent loss of power by Tsar Nicholas II in 1917. He got on his armored train going to his army headquarters, and by the time he got to the headquarters, he had abdicated. He essentially gave up his rights as a Tsar or king of the Russian Empire. Now, what happened? Economic collapse, political instability. Yes, all of that, but most importantly, a couple of agents from London, similar to Edward Bernays, psychologists who knew how to project ideas, got on the train with Tsar Nicholas II and convinced him to abdicate or give up his power, his imperial powers. Now, how do they do that? Well, they obviously were masters of communication. They convinced him that the situation is so desperate and the only solution is for him to essentially resign. And he was kind of not really a through and through type of a monarch, if you will. He was more of a playboy growing up. He had all of the privileges you can imagine. It was, remember, 1917 Anno Domini, and the cameras were just being introduced to the upper echelons of society. So the Russian royal family is the most photographed family of the time. So there were the prototype selfie type of arrangement. The first selfie trend, if you will, was set by the daughters and the little son, Alexei, of the Russian imperial family. So something like 7,000 photographs were taken amongst themselves. They had somebody on staff to develop the film and everything. But the point is, Tsar Nicholas II decided to agree to acquiesce to give up his power because someone had talked to him on the train while they were going to the headquarters, to the military headquarters. So imagine the persuasive power of that MI5 or MI6 agent. It was probably MI5 agent at that time. MI5 stands for Military Intelligence Department 5. That was the unit that was financed by the British Crown to remove the Russian imperial family and the Russian Empire, to essentially get it off the map so there's no more competition. And in a way, they succeeded. That's the core reason, the main reason why MI5 was created or financed, set up by the British Crown. And in a way, they succeeded. Look what happened in March of 1917. So that's just a brief story of the power of communication. You can actually talk a czar or a king to give up his powers with your tongue, with just your ability to talk. Please research this, Google this, learn how this was done. But the power that we have within us is virtually limitless if you believe in that. So in other words, if you have faith, the proverbial faith, you can, in a way, move mountains. Just like Mount Matacon was moved by Simon the Tanner, and the mountain is located in Cairo, Egypt. To this day, you could see the rift marks on the mountain at the time when it was moved. Simon the Tanner said a prayer and the mountain moved because of Simon's faith in the action. At least that's the tradition. But anyway, that's the story of Tsar Nicholas II and his abdication and how actually he was convinced that he needed to abdicate or give up his power. All power is actually ethereal, or it comes from, it does not dwell within us. if you pay attention, if you really notice your favorite singer or performer, when they have a whole stadium that they hold in their domain, it's not the person that's doing it, it's the angelic presence behind the person, or demonic presence, to be more accurate, behind the person that holds the attention and the energy of 100,000 people or 50,000 people or 10,000 people at the stadium, wherever they're performing. That kind of power is not of human origin. And we're going to discuss it in more detail in our future podcast. So discipline, let's talk about discipline. It's very, very, very important, especially among the young people, because the purpose of our online business school is to provide affordable online courses, virtual classes, that would allow young entrepreneurs to take a class, start their own business, and then grow their own business. Now, if the entrepreneurs are somewhat ambitious, I'm willing to share how I made my first $1.2 million at the age of 14 and a half. I was actually trading currencies, and I'm willing to put that in the digital format and share my story and teach you how to trade. If it's too complicated for you, then we could encourage you to follow your dream, and we'll give you the tools so you could start your own business and use our sales and marketing strategy methodology to grow your own business. Now, if you don't have any ideas, don't know what to do, if you're undecided, you can actually become our affiliate and promote our business school, and you will get paid for every person that signs up as our student. So in other words, they pay money, you get paid. And you could earn a living, a substantial living doing that without having to do anything at all. Just by promoting our online business school, you would be earning a living as our affiliate. Now, the civilization that we're living today is indeed collapsing, from the air and water pollution to the family values, to the collapse of the nucleus of the family as a unit of a husband and a wife where nobody wants to get married. It's a really, really sad situation where right now when we watch, Dr. Wilson and I is my business partner, and when we watch young men try to get down on their knee and propose to a woman, they don't realize that in today's environment, they don't even know what they're doing, actually. I always like to share the story how I proposed to my wife in a city park. She called me. We went to college together, so she called me after a long pause in our communication. She called me a few times. I noticed it was unusual, so I called her back that day. We met in the park. The following day, I realized that she was in a difficult relationship. She didn't say that, but I could just decipher that from our conversation. I could tell she wanted it out. And so I proposed. We got married the following day, and we saved thousands of dollars to my father-in-law. So I became his favorite son-in-law because we eloped. We didn't have a formal wedding, but we killed multiple birds with one stone. And so that's how you do it. You have to be practical. Women are very, very, very practical when it comes to that. They really don't care about you getting down on your knee as long as you have a house or a condo or an apartment and a car or an SUV. So you need transportation, you need money in the bank. So it's an economic stability what they're after. So guys, now I'm talking to you. You have to just forego the dropping down on your knee. I gave my wife, my future wife at that time, I gave her an heirloom ring that was passed on from my great-grandmother to my mother. It has a symbolic meaning. Women love that. And so I recommend that you basically get an antique ring and give to your beloved woman, your future wife, and just tell her, this is what I have. I have an apartment, I have a car. Let's move in, let's get married. If you don't have any of that, if you're just starting out your life, just be honest and upfront. Women respect that. You just have a business conversation with her. I don't have any of that, but let's build our lives together. Let's move in, let's start our life together, and we're going to build it together. And they're going to respect that you're being upfront. But they prefer to have all that already in place. This is how they want to give birth to a child in a safe environment, in a relative, more or less stable economically household where everything has its own flow. And that's what women are after primarily when they're making the choices. Otherwise, you're just a placeholder until a better opportunity comes along. That's unfortunate, but that's the truth that nobody's going to tell you. You are, as a man, a placeholder until a better man comes along, economically better man comes along, and then she will marry him instead of you. That's why tying a knot is very important to kind of secure your position, and then keep working on yourself and keep essentially developing and increasing your financial economic stability for your household, because that's our role as men, to be the providers and the security holders of the household, of our castle. So that's a quick story of the of my how I proposed to my wife at the time. And let's talk about the diet. It's very, very, very important today because everything is poison. Our food is poison. Our soil is depleted. The air is poisoned. The water is, absolutely undrinkable. They found in a glass of water something like 250 million microparticles that represent the shards of plastic and glass, invisible to the human naked eye. But even the filtered water is no longer drinkable. If you like salmon, whether it's wild caught or farm raised, it's absolutely catastrophically toxic. There's 400 times more toxicity in salmon today than what is allowed. So you cannot eat. Basically, we're forced to become vegetarians because nothing else is safe to eat. You cannot eat meat. If you only knew how those chickens are raised or any other meat gets to your plate, you would never touch it. In a way, Dr. Wilson and I, we became vegetarians because we have to, because the food is so toxic that you can't really eat meat today. It's not safe. You cannot eat fish, especially farm-raised fish. They dye it. They add the red dye. They dye salmon for it to have this pinkish reddish look. And we have a methodology that would allow us, it's a scientific methodology that would allow us theoretically to live to be 200. It's daily exercise, a certain regimen when it comes to nutrition, and positive thinking, and just being basically productive and positive. That's one of the most important things in life. 80% of your thoughts are not your thoughts. They're the thoughts of the people around you. If you're married, that's your wife or husband, that's your family members, friends, that's the social media you consume. So you cannot allow any type of negative thinking to permeate into your environment. You simply cannot allow that to happen. You must protect your environment. You have to surround yourself with positive people. Preferably, you have to have a support group, and this is why we decided to record weekly audio podcasts. So if you're going out, you can listen to this positive, reinforcing, encouraging podcast, a voice of freedom and truth that will always uplift you and give you wisdom and practical advice on how to be healthy, wealthy, and how to have wonderful relationships with your husbands, wives, and friends and family members. Now, humility or meekness is a trait that is highly valued in every society, and we want to emphasize that in all of our communication because this is the foundation of success. Humility is very, very, very important I can go on for 40 hours straight here, but to make a point, the reason why humility is highly valued in every society and every culture is because it's a certain frequency that allows you to look at yourself more objectively, meaning from a more correct perspective, without overreacting to your own achievements. So humility or meekness is highly, highly, highly important. So the next point that I'd like to mention to you is phonetics. That's right. Correctly pronouncing words and phrases is extremely important. For example, if you would say a foyer versus a foyer, that telegraphs to the world about your socioeconomic status, about your educational background. The same goes for, do you say aluminium or do you say aluminum? Well, you might say this is British versus American pronunciation. Not so much. Let me give you an example. I know a man from Lynn, Massachusetts, born and raised in America. His name is Kevin Trudeau. Every time he would run an ad campaign, he used to sell his books. he would get about $60 million, $40 to $60 million. That's in the 90s. He did infomercials. And he used to have this phrase, keep in mind he's American. So every time he would speak to a fellow American, he would say from A to Z. And every time he would speak to a British person, he would say from A to Z. Now, why do you think, this is a dialogue, why do you think Kevin, who was born and raised in America, had nothing to do with the British educational system, would use a British phraseology from A to Z? Why do you think he would do that? Well, he's an overachiever, extremely intelligent, and he basically was in a very subtle way, telling the person that the person was not very interesting to Kevin. So it's kind of like a polite way of saying, get away from me, from A to Z. And the person never even got it. You see, that's I'm trying to decipher to you what's going on in the realm of people who highly intelligent, wunderkinder. Wunderkinder is the plural form of the German word wunderkind, which means prodigy child or child prodigy, which means a highly intelligent, high-achieving child or adult. So when you're dealing with people who've made money since an early age and they're extremely intellectually gifted, it's a completely different level. So as soon as you open your mouth, they read you like an X-ray machine. So they know about your socioeconomic background. So if you say a foyer, they automatically know you're a redneck or some bimbo, something like that. But if you say, oh, that's a nice foyer, they know you're a classy person. You are more or less, at least you know how to pronounce the word correctly. Similar to, is it a vase or is it a vase? And many, many others. And it's not really like you might say, oh, well, my mother speaks French and therefore I know I should say foyer. No, it has nothing. It's average American with a half a brain that's educated to just a minimal degree knows that it's foyer. It's never foyer. And never say that. If you want to come across as an educated, classy person, it's a foyer. I guarantee you that. Even if you don't speak a lick of French, it has nothing to do with it. It's just your socioeconomic background. And this is something that you telegraph every single time you open your mouth. People in the know, meaning highly intelligent people with high IQ over 250, people like Dr. Wilson and everybody in our circle of friends and family members, we just, as soon as you say something, anything you say is being judged all the time by other people. Example, we get a lot of phone calls or actually messages through our website, people who would like to become our affiliates or marketing agents or our employees. So they send us their resumes or they try to, and most of the time is not even on par with minimal requirements for you're supposed to submit a resume and then you attach your cover letter. So finally today we had a breakthrough. We had a wonderful, brilliant young man. He's only 20 years old. He already has plans, sent us a beautiful, wonderful resume and a cover letter. I spoke with him personally. It was a phenomenal conversation. So that means there's hope for America. He is a brilliant 20-year-old man that goes to school, earns a living. He will be helping us with our marketing efforts. And he has his whole entire life ahead of him. And he appears to be much more mature than a typical 20-year-old man, in America at least. Wonderful conversation, wonderful background, everything is there. See, that's a standard for just a desire. I asked him where he acquired this sort of a business savvy and everything else that he possesses. He said it was mostly due to his inquisitiveness. So you have to be very inquisitive. Your mind has to be inquisitive. If you don't have the inquisitiveness of your mind, there is no future. So this young man of 20 years of age is a perfect example of having an inquisitive mind that allowed him to, right now at this point, receive such high marks or recommendations or compliments from me. So I'm complimenting his entire presentation, his posture, the way he carried himself on the phone. And that's just a pleasure of dealing with people like that. That's who we're trying to reach out and equip with more knowledge, scientific data, how to lead a healthy life, how to make more money if they have an idea, how to implement their idea, especially if they're an inventor, how to patent their idea, how to market their idea, how to make millions and millions of dollars. Because what happens after you get into the realm of becoming a multimillionaire, the first million that you make, you realize money does not exist. So I can't say enough positive things about this bright young man who's got his whole life already planned out into the future. He wants to make $170,000 per month. He wants to be retired in 10 years. By the time he's 30, he wants to be traveling with his future wife. Yeah, he even has a girlfriend who is, he said, 12 years his senior. So there's a 12 years difference between them. If he is 20, that means she's 32. Now, I didn't tell him, but for the sake of our listeners, guys, listen up. Whatever he's doing with his girlfriend is his business. But just know this, that a man could fertilize an egg at any age, virtually any age, all the way into the 90s. Kirk Kerkorian made a baby at the age of 98 with a young tennis player from Michigan. So he had a baby when he was 98 years old. He's a billionaire from that I knew from LA. He passed away a few years ago. But anyway, he was at 98, he fathered a child. No big deal. He's got the billions. It's not a money issue anymore. It's a reversal of roles. So a woman cannot safely give birth to a child past, 21, 25, 28. They're risking their lives when they are over 30 and they try to give birth. Now, that's just half the story, half the trouble. In reality is most women are fed energetically from the men around them. So in other words, every woman that's older, naturally, if she could, she would rather be with a younger man to be fed energetically. They're like vampires. They suck your energy dry. Like when you have an intercourse and you have an orgasm, what happens to a man? You know the story, right? You can't move. But a woman is normal, right? Why? Because she received your energy from you. Well, similarly, day by day, every single day, women just suck the energy from men, like a vampire, literally. Women are energetic vampires. So older women tend to want to be around younger men to be energetically reinforced or fed. And so I know that this bright young man who is 20 years old will one day figure this out. He obviously probably doesn't know this at this point, but this is a statistic that is very well known to most adults who are over 30. I mean, any man over 30 today, at least in Europe, knows about these things. In America, every man over 40 knows about these things. So in due time, this young man will learn about these things. And so that's why it's natural to see an older man with a younger woman and not the other way around. It's because of this disproportionate energy exchange between men and women. So women suck the men dry when it comes to energy levels, and not the other way around. Men, we give energy to women and to the world because we're the creative spirits, and women just take and take and take. We need women only to make babies. That's the only reason for women to exist is to make babies, to give birth and to raise them. That's it. Other than that, we could perfectly survive without women if we didn't have that kind of a arrangement to procreate. Otherwise, the civilization would die out. That's the short of it. When it comes to the age difference, it's not a problem for men, but if the woman is older, she's going to suck all the energy from him continuously. And at some point, just young men don't know about this thing. But when they get older, they learn, and they just learn through experience. And that's why there are a lot of cougars looking for young, inexperienced men to be there, to feed them with energy. So that's the story. Little word of wisdom to the listeners, especially to the young listeners who don't know about these things, and now they do know. 5 minutes later, you didn't know, now you do. So you're 50 years wiser. You spent only a couple of minutes. So anyway, but other than that, the young man is brilliant. Absolutely, absolutely brilliant, and just has a bright future ahead of him. So God bless him. Again, money does not exist in the Western Hemisphere. Yes, you can go to an ATM, get a few dollars from an ATM and buy a burger. That's understandable. But as soon as you get into larger sums of money, it's all digital. As soon as I saw that I made my first $1.2 million at the age of 14 and a half, I fully understood what that means, that money does not exist. It's actually kind of an illusory substance that's very fluid. And let me tell you a story. when I was in college and I studied economics and psychology. My degree is in economics and psychology. So our economics professor took an entire class on a tour of the Federal Reserve. So we went there, and this is where I saw with my own eyes that the proverbial dollars that are being printed digitally. They're being printed with computers. There was a small portion of the building that was dedicated to printing physical dollars, but it's only to replenish the dollars, the physical dollars that were already in circulation. They're getting old. But the majority of the money that is being quote unquote printed, the trillions of dollars in America that's being printed, especially lately, that money has been printed like that since 1971 by mainframe computers. In those days, there were very, very large computers. Keep in mind, those mainframe computers were in circulation since 1945. That's the ENIAC computer. That was later replaced by UNIVAC computer, and then later on they were replaced by similar computers. They're very large mainframe computers. They handle, large computational functions. And so the Fed prints the money in a digital format. Then they essentially tie it with the treasury bills, and then that's how it enters the commercial banking system of the United States. And that's how money is created digitally. So in 1971, President Richard Nixon announced on national television that the U.S. government essentially defaulted. They were not able to back the U.S. dollars, or they were forced to announce they had to detether the U.S. dollar from all precious metals so they can print the paper that's not backed by anything. After the French demanded their gold, you see, the U.S. was storing the gold of various nations, and when General de Gaulle sent the French Navy to the United States, to the New York City port, to collect the gold, the French gold that was held in New York City, it was denied. It was an international scandal, and after that, the U.S. sort of halfway gave up the French gold to the French, but then they realized if everyone were to demand their gold, there will be nothing left. And that's when they detethered or disconnected the U.S. dollar from gold, and they were able to print as much money as they wanted, U.S. dollars. And so that's a brief history of money. Does not exist. Since 1971, it's primarily a digital concept. At the age of 14 and a half, I fully realized that when I made my first $1.2 million. And on and on and on. Every year it was an exponential growth for me every year after that. Once again, money does not exist. Try to get this concept through your head. Whatever you're earning today, as soon as you make your first $1 million, you will remember these words, and you will remember this. You'll say, money indeed does not exist. You cannot work as a W-2 full-time employee and make $1 million unless you're a CEO of a major corporation. So you have to be an entrepreneur, you have to have your own LLC, you have to have your own game plan, you have to have guts to do it. And that's what we help young and not so young entrepreneurs do, to utilize their time and energy and use our experience and encouraging words and encouraging basically podcasts that we're going to be producing on a weekly basis to help you make your first $1 million. Because it's not only possible, you just have to be in the right frame of mind. So the purpose for us to record these podcasts and all of our material is to put you in the right state of mind. Because right now, if you're listening to the rap music, listening to your neighbors who are broke financially and emotionally, you're never going to get to the $1 million range. It's just not possible. Your mind is polluted by the thoughts of your financially broke neighbors and family members. So you have to detach yourself from those emotionally and financially bankrupt people and listen to our podcasts over and over and over again to become reprogrammed. And by reprogramming your mind with appropriate material, you will be able to understand what it takes to make $1 million, what methodology should be used. And then how do you take it into $100 million? Then what do you do when you want to be at $1 billion? Dr. Wilson and I today, we run a family office, which is kind of like a hedge fund, and we invest into high technology, such as hypersonic drones, and particle accelerators. That's what we do. That's our interest. Technology, high technology. So let me give you just an example of what we're into. We're not into making money anymore. We're not into millions of dollars. Just managing the money, managing all of our assets is hard enough. It's a lot of responsibility. So if you think you're going to be making money off of your laptop on a sunny beach in Costa Rica somewhere, you're gravely mistaken. It ain't going to happen. You cannot make money, millions of dollars, on a warm beach somewhere and be sort of lackadaisically, casually handling your business. It's a full-time responsibility. So when Dr. Wilson and I, when we see those messages on YouTube and other platforms that pitch to the young entrepreneurs the garbage that they pitch, that they're going to sell them a course that will teach them how to make millions of dollars and do nothing, run. As soon as you see that, run from them. That's garbage. That's nonsense. That's trash. You understand? That's trash. Those morons should be all imprisoned and sent to the Gulag prisons in Siberia. And if they're closed, they need to be reopened so that they'll be shoveling snow for the rest of their lives, because that is not appropriate to mislead people that they have a system that will allow other people to make millions of dollars and do nothing. It's ridiculous. And the fact that the population believes in that shows the gullibility of the population at a critical point. Meaning it's too much football without a helmet, or too much Kool-Aid, or too much some kind of chemicals in the system. Meaning people are being too naive. And our goal is to send a message, first and foremost, to the young men and women, to the young entrepreneurs in America and Canada, in the English-speaking world, anywhere in the world where English is understood, to share the message of how to take care of your health, how to make money, trading currencies, or just by utilizing Kaizen business methodology to start and grow your business. No matter what industry you're in, you actually could still become very successful. And you could still potentially get to millions of dollars, potentially. But money is not everything. Actually, what you need to consider, what is happiness, is a combination of wealth, health, and relationships. So as long as you have enough to be in a relatively free state, so you could travel, you could take care of all of your needs and the needs of your family, you could consider yourself happy. That's the definition of happiness. So you're not in a dire financial need. That would be problematic. And so that's basically the message of today. So the fanatical approach, watch what you listen to. If you're going to be listening to the rap music, I don't think you're going to get very far in life. Listen to Antonio Vivaldi instead. Listen to the Four Seasons by Antonio Vivaldi. Look at this divine sort of a harmony. It's beautiful. It's not, bada bing, bada boom, bada zoom, zoom, zoom type of style music. It's a totally different universe. In fact, if you have a resemblance of becoming a future advanced human being, and currently you listen to the rap music, by just listening to that one piece by Antonio Vivaldi, it's called The Four Seasons. If you have it in you, you will immediately recognize the masterpiece, and you will never listen to anything other than music of that caliber, of that sort. You will never, ever again listen to the rap music, because rap music is what it is. It's not music, you understand? And it keeps you enslaved in that environment, in that sort of a cesspool of kind of negativity and violence and crime and all this nonsense. Whatever they sing about, whatever the lyrics are, do you think they're saying those things because they're happy? Because they're going to telegraph to the world that they're going to share their wonderful emotions? No, they're projecting their pain. Why would you want to allow to dwell in somebody else's pain and suffering 24/7? Do you like that? No. It's a form of propaganda. It's a form of indoctrination. It's a form of control. It's a form of, there's state propaganda, there's commercial propaganda. So the American indoctrination machine in Hollywood and the music industry is very powerful, very subtle, very demonic, very dark. And that's what keeps many, many, many people in that sort of that's what keeps many, many people enslaved. That's why we see so many mass shootings in America. It's really a catastrophic situation on many levels. The dolphins, the whales keep throwing themselves on beaches around the world because of water pollution, because of the sonars that are being used by ships and submarines that blind the echolocation system of the whales. It's all the way around. We've never seen a more catastrophic situation in the world as we are seeing today. You know, the military conflicts around the world, in Sudan, in Artsakh, Nagorno-Karabakh, in Ukraine, in, you name it, in Yemen, in other countries. What is the reason for all that? Well, unfortunately, there's some people, you have to follow the money here. It's a geopolitical reason. Unfortunately, a lot of money is involved. You know, every time there's a war, the military-industrial complex suddenly becomes the most profitable field to be in. The war in Iraq, the so-called fake war in Iraq, it was all fake. It was just like the war in Vietnam in 1964 was a fake war. It was a false flag operation, proven. Nobody attacked those ships, and yet the war, quote-unquote, war was declared, and in the end it was feeding, thousands of... The war machine was fed in America. Similarly, the war in Iraq brought to the United States economy over $2 trillion. So the economy grew. 3 million Iraqis were killed or disposed of or displaced. Is it fair? No, but that's what every war does. There are people who are benefiting from every time a missile is fired somewhere. It's $1.5 million missile, and they need to be replenished. So they're interested. They employ these consultants called lobbyists or beltway bandits from around Washington, D.C., who instigate wars around the world. So the war in Ukraine is very, very simple. We're just going to do just one quick analysis, and then we're going to wrap this podcast up because it's very important for your future investing. A year before the war in Ukraine started, it's in public domain, we predicted the day and time when this will happen. How did we know? From public sources. We just follow the trends. We are able to recognize the patterns, which are all cyclical. To us, it's so obvious. For most people, it's like, how did you know it? Kevin Trudeau from Lynn, Massachusetts, from A to Z, remember? That's the analogy. Try to understand what he was saying, being an American, saying from A to Z. He was just laughing at people, essentially, saying, you're not on the same level as me. You don't get it. You don't get me. So back to the war in Ukraine. There are plenty of indicators ahead of time that something really bad is about to happen. Everything is encoded. You have to be able to decipher the code that's right in front of your eyes all the time, non-stop, constantly staring at you. So a year before the war started in Ukraine, we warned all of our students and business associates that they need to be very careful and remove themselves from that territory. And sure enough, everything materialized on February, I believe, 22nd of 2022, and everybody contacted us and says, how did you know? Well, you see, it's the wrong question to ask. It's not how did we know, it's so obvious. It's what is next. And the next thing is Taiwan. The next thing is the biggest war in the Middle East between, again, it's Iran, it's Pakistan, it's India, China, and the whole mess with there's going to be another global war. That's the situation we're in. So how do you make money with Ukraine? It's very simple. You just need to find a clown, put him in power, and that's what they did. Igor Kolomoisky is the local billionaire who stole $3 billion from a Russian bank through a scam and $3 billion from another Ukrainian bank through a similar scam. So he sits on about $6 billion. He has his own private army. He financed this clown named Vladimir Zelensky. And so he used to perform at Kvartal 95 and KVN, which is like basically essentially what it is. It's a stage for comedians, for stand-up comedians in Ukraine. And he was approached by Igor Kolomoisky. He was financed by Igor Kolomoisky. And that's how it's done. So you have to have basically money, an interested party, and some PR people behind it. And you put a person in power, a clown like Zelensky, who's a self-taught actor comedian. And then he will do anything you want him to do. They bring him cocaine, they bring him cash, and then he just reads off the script for you. How convenient is it now? We've had plenty of presidents like that or similar to that in the White House, but not quite to this degree. A guy that gets openly is high on cocaine and gets $100 million in cash per week, buys luxury real estate in Spain and Miami and everywhere around the world, and is essentially used as a proxy war between Russia and the United States. Why? Because every time a missile is fired, the American military-industrial complex benefits from it. So there's a direct financial benefit, economic benefit in this war. That's it. People are dying. Yes, the Russian, Ukrainian soldiers are dying, being sacrificed for nothing. But it's all, again, using the technology of Mr. Overton from Michigan or Edward Bernays, the father of PR. They're the ones who actually started the trend how to weaponize everything. And so the war in Ukraine today represents essentially a money-making machine, money laundering machine of a corrupt system, of a Western corrupt system on such a scale that has not been seen before, to the tune of tens of billions of dollars. They used to steal $1 million here, $1 million there, embezzle, they used to steal it through political channels, through money washing operations, this and that. But this is in the billions of dollars. So that's why they're saying we can sacrifice a couple of million people. That's why they sacrificed 3 million Iraqis. No big deal, right? So in other words, human lives to them is nothing. Those people are not human, if you will. If you believe in demonology, if you believe in the Bible, in the Quran, those people are essentially demon-possessed or demon-controlled people or human beings on two legs, controlled fully by the demonic dark forces. There is no other way to describe it, because if they can sacrifice 3 or 5 million people for the sake of lining up their pockets, what sort of moral value do they hold? Are they good people in your book? What do you say? It's a dialogue, remember? We're just sharing ideas. So this is my idea to introduce to you and follow the money. You look at any political or geopolitical event and try to explain it away. And the most logical explanation here is that people who are behind all of these events benefit tremendously from every single war, including World War I, World War II, and so on and so forth. And the U.S. has never declared a war since the last war in World War II against Japan. And so all those so-called wars were not wars. They were called special military operations, because you can bring in the troops, you can do your dirty business, take in the resources like from Iraq. The same thing is happening, or has been happening in Armenia and Azerbaijan over this contested territory called Artsakh or Nagorno-Karabakh. Same thing. There is a oil and gas pipeline that was built in 1988 between the two territories, and it's going right through that region. And what they've been trying to sort of propose, Iran, Azerbaijan, Turkey, and Russia want to use that pipeline to pump essentially $5 billion worth of petrochemicals, petroproducts a year. Well, Armenia refuses because they have their own reasons. How can you possibly refuse to 4 major geographic regional players to bring their petroproducts and do trade to the tune of $5 billion per year because you're just in the way? You're going to be annihilated. So that's what happened in Armenia. Very, very, very not very talented politicians without any analyticals, because they don't realize that the country could be wiped off the map, literally, over $5 billion. I mean, literally. That's a lot of money for that region. And so the only thing that Armenia should do or could do or should have done is, essentially agree to this multi-party economic cooperation alliance, and everything would have been fine. But no, there's always miscommunication mostly. Those people cannot think logically in that region. It must be the temperature there. It's 43 degrees. It gets very hot Celsius, which is about 105 degrees Fahrenheit. Very dry air. There's not enough oxygen. It's high elevation. And so they can't get enough oxygen into their brains, literally. So they can't think straight. It's all if you look at those pictures like in Palestine and in Israel, everybody's the same kind of a situation. Everybody's too hot-headed and they don't think logically like in more northern latitudes. So there's a lack of logic and rationale. And that's what a lot of lobbyists take advantage of. When they look geographically, okay, it's the Middle East, they can't think straight, and they lasso them in. They bring them in, and the usual spiel is usually used. So that's just an example of how geopolitics is arranged or how it's used to profit economically or financially. Now, what can you do? Well, continue listening to our podcasts, broaden your horizons, take up a phonetics course if you mispronounce certain words in English or other languages. It's foyer, remember, not a foyer. And it's a vase, not a vase. And there's many more words, How do you say Houston or Houston? Well, if you're in New York City, it's a regional dialect. It's a Houston Street. But if you're in Texas, it's Houston, the largest city in the state of Texas. So on this note, I want to wish you all the best. I want to wish you a successful week. Tune in next week so you can be encouraged once again with some positive news that it's not over. Even though our civilization is collapsing, there's war coming to every country in the world, especially in the Middle East. We could still dig ourselves into bunkers underground. We're actually building, Dr. Wilson and I, we're investing a lot of money into a regional project here for our underground facilities where we can survive the nuclear holocaust if it ever happens. And we highly recommend if you have the resources to do the same, because it's very, very, very likely that you might have to use your underground nuclear bunkers one of these days. I mean, we hope not, of course, but there's a real possibility that we might all have to partake in the real drill. On this note, I'd like to close by saying you're welcome to our school. Again, in order to be considered, send us your mission statement. Upload it through our website, www.alphacorporatesales.com. In the Contact Us section, upload a PDF file with your mission statement, with your plans and visions, and include a one-page resume to let us know where you are professionally. Be sure to describe your situation, how old you are, where you live, and what your aspirations are. And we look forward to seeing you in our school. And we hope to see you on the next podcast next week. Don't forget to share this with your family and friends. And always stay positive. Take care, and don't be late this time.